Thank you. Please be seated. Prefect joke of the day. Give me a second. 6:30 is my favorite time of the day, hands down.
Thank you, Roberto. Hilarious and thought-provoking. Our opening hymn this morning is the Copeman's House hymn number 2. Quietly open your books and stand. Number 2, Lift High the Cross. Thank you all. Please be seated. So I just want to begin by asking Carrie Walker up to make a few thank yous this morning.
Good morning, everyone. This past weekend, I had the pleasure, alongside the Secretariat, to run Shulman Victoria. Honestly, this was an experience that was truly unforgettable. It has been the genuine personal connections that I have made that have kept me in Model UN for so long. When I was told I was going to be Secretary General this year, my greatest wish was for Shulman to be a Model United Nations conference that has the foundations for delegates with open minds and fresh ideas. This past weekend, delegates were representing the true essence of the United Nations. People from different countries, schools, ethnicities, and cultures coming together to find attainable solutions to real problems. I started Model UN as a shy girl who was just finding her voice. I was unsure of who I was, and I gave MUN a chance, hoping I would learn something new. This 3-year journey has allowed me to find myself as an individual and has shown me how powerful one's voice can be. As I reflect back, it is surreal to think that I was the one closing the closing ceremonies of my last conference. Model UN has taught me the art of diplomacy, and I have made friendships which I hope will last a lifetime. When I first stepped into Mr. Klassen's classroom back in grade 10, it was the Secretary General at the time that started to speak so eloquently on the first day of the fine art that year, it drew me in. As I listened, his passion quickly became my passion. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has made this conference possible. Thank you to Transportation for helping to get everyone there safely. And thank you for IT for working tirelessly to help set everything up. Thank you to Mr. Lamont and Ms. Bokahari for coming to speak and support us this last weekend. Thank you to all of the staff and secretariat members of Shawmut 2019 for your tireless devotion these last 10 months in preparation for this year's conference. Now, I would especially like to thank Isaac, your Director General. When I think back to grade 10, all of my fondest memories in Model UN include him in some way. Thank you for taking my calls at 11 o'clock at night when you were in the middle of your meditation routine. Thank you for always having my back whenever we were making any tough decisions, even if you didn't completely agree with me. You have been the most incredible person to work alongside with while organizing Shawmut this year. Ms. Ketch, your positivity and encouragement consistently made my day brighter. You were always there for me as a support system whenever I needed help. I am so glad that you are part of Shawnigan's Model UN program, and I'm forever grateful for you. Senora, thank you for your patience throughout this year. It has meant the world to me. Over the past 3 years, I feel as if you have become my Model UN mum. Your kindness made me feel welcomed and comfortable, and you have supported me and encouraged me, and I could not have done this without your unconditional love. And finally, Mr. Klassen, thank you for all of the extra time and effort you have consistently put towards Model UN. Throughout the preparation of this conference, you have been so incredibly supportive. Thank you for challenging me to think further and dream bigger. Thank you for creating an environment of enthusiasm for learning, appreciation for growing, and room for making mistakes along the way. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Thanks for sharing your passion and for all the work that you've put into Shawmut over the years, and for kind of exhibiting to us, I think, a very important principle that we try to live, which is that we staff really do try to get out of the way as much as possible to allow you students to really experience and to express and to show your leadership ability. So thank you for all of that. So a few words from me this morning. So who knows why we will be having a holiday at the end of this week? What's going on? Easter, right. So we are actually in the midst of what in the Christian calendar is called Holy Week, which culminates in Easter Sunday. And some of you may be going to church on Easter Sunday with your families. Others of you maybe have only a vague notion of what Easter's about. But, you know, I always think it's my duty as the chaplain to at least say a few words so that everybody has at least some vague idea of what Easter is all about. So the story in a nutshell is this. Jesus, who was a Jewish rabbi living in the first century Palestine, is executed by the Romans in the common manner of the day, which was by being nailed to a cross. And the reason for his execution is that basically that he was a nuisance. He taught some things that the powers that be, both the civil powers and the religious powers, didn't like. He taught that people should be free, not just physically, but spiritually and emotionally. And he taught that every person is equal in the sight of God. So those were dangerous ideas at the time, and maybe they're still dangerous ideas in some places. So 3 days after he's crucified, Jesus rises from the tomb and appears to his followers. So Easter is a celebration of that event, that resurrection of Jesus from the dead. The Bible doesn't make any mention of chocolate eggs or bunnies. Not that there's anything at all wrong with chocolate eggs or the bunnies that bring them. But Easter is a commemoration of events that have played a large role in Western culture. And of course, it has a central place in Christian tradition. But it's also a story, I believe, that carries a very important central truth. And the universal truth of Easter is simply that good, ultimately triumphs over evil, even when, as often is the case, it doesn't seem to be that way. So that's the meaning and symbol of the cross. Not that it triumphs, as we just sang, in the sense that we have more power than the other guy has, but the power of goodness and kindness over the power of hate and evil. So this may seem to be a simple idea, but it's actually an extremely important one in our own lives. The world, of course, is full of examples of goodness. This community especially is full of examples and goodness, but the world is also full of examples of brutality and horror. And we are always confronted with the choice of committing ourselves either to goodness and kindness or to evil and hate. So what we believe about good and evil, which is the more powerful, will influence the choices we make in life. I think the reason that this seems like a simple idea, maybe an obvious one, is that in general, in our society, we've already made that choice. We've already chosen to believe that that there's a power in goodness. We believe that if we live good lives, that eventually good will come of them. On a personal level, however, no matter how hard we try to choose the good, sometimes we make bad choices. Sometimes we fail to be as selfless and kind as we would like to be. And when that happens, when we make a bad choice, either consciously or sometimes unconsciously, we have the opportunity to be forgiven and start over. So forgiveness is really big in Easter. It's all about forgiveness. For many religious people, the source of goodness and forgiveness is a divine person. The death and resurrection of Jesus, for instance, is believed by Christians to be an indication of God's love and forgiveness for us. But the way we actually experience forgiveness in our own lives is through the understanding and compassion of the people around us. We only know we're forgiven when we experience that from other people, when they forgive us, when they understand us, when they show us kindness. So I was out in my garden one day, and I had an experience that caused me to stop and reflect on this notion of forgiveness and how it can affect our lives. I was digging in some tall grass, and at one point I looked down and I saw a little garter snake writhing on the ground. And I thought at first that I'd mortally wounded it with my shovel. But on closer inspection, I saw that what had happened is that it had become stuck in the hole of one of those little green plastic plant holders. It was stuck fast. It couldn't go in and it couldn't go out. The pot prevented it from doing anything but wiggling around. So I got a pair of clippers and I carefully cut the plastic away and freed the little snake. And he was fine. The little snake was fine. It slithered away with what seemed to me to be a happy little wiggle. That little snake seemed to me to be a metaphor for the promise of the Easter story, that no matter how low we sink, there's always a chance to rise again and to start over. The snake had crawled through the hole in the flower pot without having any idea at all that it was going to get stuck there, that it was actually a trap, like many of the situations that our lives present to us. And we are like that little snake. We can go and we can and do go and get ourselves into trouble on occasion, but when we do, help will be there, is there. It's always there when we need it, even when the trouble that we're in is trouble that we've caused for ourselves. So whether we believe in a compassionate God or in the kindness of our friends and family, there comes a time for all of us that forgiveness is the only thing that will allow us to move forward in our lives. Sometimes that forgiveness comes quickly. Sometimes it takes a very, very long time. So as we enter into the final months of the year, keep making good choices. Don't go sticking your head into unfamiliar holes without thinking about what you're doing. And don't hesitate to reach out for help when you feel a need for it. Ask for forgiveness when you fall short. It will be there and you will find it. I wanted to just say a word because of the tragedy that happened yesterday in Paris. you know, and I think so many people were deeply affected by the destruction of the Cathedral of Notre Dame by fire. And so, you know, maybe just that we might take a moment to you know, to be in support of the people of Paris who, you know, who've experienced such a, really, when you think about it, such a tremendous loss with the loss of Notre Dame Cathedral. I was there last August for the first time, so I consider myself very fortunate, but I also feel deeply the heartbreak of that tragedy. So we'll think about them this morning. So if you open your hymnals, some of you will find in there a little piece of paper. And some of you will recognize this hymn which was kind of banned from the hymnal the last time it was printed for various reasons, mostly because of the choreography that went along with it. I have a few more copies, so we're going to try to keep the little choreography to a minimum. If you're new here and you don't know this, I won't say anything about it. You can ask some of the senior students later. So let me just hand out a few more of these, and we're going to sing Lord of the Dance. So if there's not a copy around you or with you, just raise your hand. That's where they are. Okay. So I didn't make enough copies for everybody because I just couldn't face killing another tree. So please share with the person next to you or in front of you. Kind of hold your copy out so everybody around you can read it. You guys have copies? Okay. Great, please stand. Thank you all. That just got worse and worse, but I think it's the Strath girls that started it, isn't it? The bouncing. Thank you all. Have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful day. If you could put the copies of the